Is the Canadian dream dead? I must admit, this is a bit of a heavy topic to be getting into, but it's the one I have to talk about today. Let me tell you a little story about how my morning went. I woke up, as I usually do, reached for my phone beside my bed. And what do you do when you reach for your phone beside your bed if you're someone like me? You immediately go on the internet, go on your favorite social media app, and just start scrolling absent mindedly. A terrible thing to do, by the way. Don't be like me. If you can avoid it, don't be like me and waste the first 20 minutes of your day just scrolling absent mindedly. But that's what I did. And I was just checking the Canadian news. I was just checking a few different things. And I came across this post in the Canadian section of Reddit, and that's what it was called. It was called, Is the Canadian Dream Dead? And I want to share it with you today. And then I want to share my own opinion on this question of if the Canadian dream is really dead. Is the Canadian dream dead? The cost of living in this beautiful country is unbelievable. Everything is getting out of reach. Our new middle class is people renting homes and owning a vehicle. What happened to working hard for a few years, even a decade, and you'd be able to afford the basics of life? Wages go up $1. The price of electricity, food, rent, taxes, insurance all go up by 5. It's like an endless race where our wage is permanently slowed. Buy a house, buy a car, own a few toys, and travel a little. Have a family, live life, and hopefully give the next generation a better life. It's not a lot to ask for. In fact, it was the only carrot on a stick that the older generation dangled for us. What do we have besides hope? I don't know what direction will change this, but it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel when you have a whole generation that has been waiting for a chance to start life for a long time. The 2007-8 crash wasn't even the start of our problems today. Please, someone convince me that there is hope, that there is still hope for what I thought was the best place to live in the world as a child. Ooh, that's heavy, isn't it? That is heavy stuff. Once again, I didn't write that. That's a post on Reddit. I'll put a link in the description if anyone wants to dive deep and see what the replies say and enter the conversation themselves. But I think this is a very, almost poetic way of expressing a feeling that every Canadian my age or younger, or older too, I mean, probably people 35, 40 feel that as well. Generally speaking, this is a voice for millennials. Canadian, American, probably European as well. I mean, there's probably a lot of people around the world who are seeing this. But something about Canada and the United States, perhaps the fact that we're younger countries and we have so much space to build into, it was always just taken for granted that that would continue, and that, that life of the big house, the toys to play with, that high standard of living would continue. Why wouldn't it? We are seeing so many technological increases. Why wouldn't the standard of living keep going up? We literally have robots who are able to work in factories now. We have drones who will soon be delivering our mail for us. We got automated checkout machines, and we have all this technology that we never had before, which in theory is able to help a capitalist society, is able to, create more wealth to go around. But where is that wealth? Why, as that person pointed out, does it feel like for every dollar you earn, you need to spend 5 more? And let's be very honest about one thing. I mean, it's going to be a tough few years after COVID. It's a lot of people lost their jobs. I'm really one of them. I'm not in a terrible situation like a lot of people are who might have kids to raise or a family to look after or a mortgage to pay off. if I was in that situation, my life would be really, really messed up to not have steady income. Thankfully, this YouTube thing, I'm able to pivot my content, and I'm able to, whether I travel or not, I'm just in a unique situation a lot of people don't have. But I'm also living in an apartment building. This building is like about 100 years old. It's one of the older buildings in Montreal. I don't have an air conditioner. It gets hot in the summer. It's getting hotter, It's it's maybe a nice lifestyle when you are, in your 20s or early 30s and you don't have many concerns to worry about. But if I was set on raising a family, this wouldn't be the place to do it. So I definitely feel that emotion that person was sharing. And I would definitely agree with the idea that to some extent the dream is dead. To some extent the dream is dead. You know the comedian George Carlin? If you've never checked out any George Carlin videos on YouTube, you should take a look down that rabbit hole. This guy was a genius. And he did a very funny routine about the American dream where he and it's let's be honest. What I was talking about, the idea of the house, the big house with the two kids and all that, that was in many ways a privileged dream to have to begin with. It's not like new immigrants to Canada or the US all had that same lifestyle. They have the dream. They were dreaming of the lifestyle. But the suburbs were like, a mostly, let's say, mostly white middle class experience for people who had already been in America or Canada for a couple generations, usually. And my family was part of that. And a lot of other people's were too. Now, does that mean the dream should disappear? I don't think so. I'm just pointing out a fact. That doesn't change things for my generation who looks at the current state of Canada and thinks like, well, that dream has disappeared. And a big part of the reason the dream has disappeared is because the cost of housing has risen so exponentially that, I don't expect to own a house in my lifetime. When I was a teenager, I probably, took for granted that one day I'll own a house. But then when you do start paying attention to it, it's clear that our generation is getting screwed in a way in terms of the future we'll be able to afford. So I would say that Canadian dream is dead. I would say the American dream is dead. Or at least it's going to have to change. And there's two things I want to say about this from the perspective of a traveler, because as someone who's lived and traveled in many different countries, I might have a sort of unique perspective on this, because I think a lot of Canadians who have only lived in Canada might forget what it's like in most of the world. There was one line in this. There's one line in this post which I don't agree with. Buy a house, buy a car, own a few toys, and travel a little. Have a family, live life, and hopefully give the next generation a better life. It's not a lot to ask for. I disagree with that. I actually think it is a lot to ask for. I think for 99% of the humans on the planet Earth, that's not something they can really expect to have. To buy a house, to buy a car, at least the kind of houses we're talking about in this country. That's a mansion. That's you look extremely rich to people from most countries, And even some well-off countries like South Korea. When I was in Korea, nobody owns a house. If you own a house, period, you're like a movie star or you come from some serious wealth. People just live in apartments. Even upper middle class people who have people who are working for Samsung as engineers, like good jobs, or you're a university professor or something. You are living in an apartment. Now, granted, it will be a nicer apartment than some other people. You might have a gated community, and there's nothing wrong with being in an apartment building, but you're raising your family there. You don't have a backyard for your kids. You don't have as much space and privacy as most Canadians have. Maybe even maybe even a wealthy person in Korea has less space and privacy than a lower middle class person in Canada who was able to afford a house in a cheaper city. So I think our perspective is a bit like our perspective. We're just looking at the previous generation in Canada. Very rarely are we looking at the whole world and being like, okay, so we still have it quite good, don't we? In a lot of ways. Now, again, I'm not saying that to be like, suck it up, younger generation, because I'm also not happy about the direction of affordability in this country. It's just a little bit of perspective to keep in mind that, things could still be a lot worse. And we shouldn't forget to have any gratitude for the country we live in just because we don't have the same experience as our parents or their parents. That goes for Canadians, Americans, anyone really who can understand what I'm saying there. But the second point I want to make has to do with people who want to move to Canada. As a traveler, I've experienced this in like so many different countries. When I live in Vietnam and I tell people I'm from Canada, I can't tell you how many times someone will ask, take me to Canada. I want to move to Canada. How do I get to Canada? Sometimes they're kind of joking. They're just making conversation. But other times they're very serious. Like other times they're like giving me their email address. They're like, please get me to Canada. And I need to explain, like, listen, like I can tell you the Canadian government's website and like maybe show you the website where you can find out the steps to immigrate to Canada. And I can make sure you're not just falling for some scam, because unfortunately there are scammers who try to like promise visas to Canada or America, and it's just they're not true. So I can make sure someone's not going to get scammed, but like, what am I, a random Canadian, gonna do to actually bring you to my country? It's nothing. Like there's nothing I can do. So if I'm in Mexico or Vietnam or Morocco or like any of these places where I meet people who want to come to Canada, it's a weird thing because you don't want to, like I would never explain what I just explained in this video to them, because you don't want to crush someone's dream before it's even started. Like you don't want to be telling someone don't come, it's getting so expensive, food prices are going up, housing prices are going up. You don't come, because like they're probably dealing with affordability issues in their own country. And when they see pictures of Canada, they think, how can you be complaining? Like, look what we're dealing with here. And so I don't want to make it like a competition about who's got it worse or whatever. It's just, I also feel like sometimes it's a shame because you meet people who, like they were doctors or engineers in their old country, and they came to Canada for a dream of a better life. And they get here and it's hard. It's really, really hard because it's more expensive than they thought it was. They can't get the same job because we have a lot of qualified immigrants these days. We have more people qualified for certain positions than the positions themselves. Or maybe like if you were an engineer or a doctor in Kenya, maybe your degree doesn't transfer. Like they don't recognize it here, so you're just driving taxis. I dare you to have a conversation, like get to know some of the taxi drivers in Canada. You can't believe how many of them were like most of them are immigrants, and most of them were like super qualified at something in their old country. Heck, I worked a job one summer where I was painting houses. I was painting houses in Winnipeg, and I was working with a older Russian guy, and him and his wife both had like nice jobs in Russia. Like his wife was had a master's degree in I forget what, but she's I think an engineer or I don't know what, but she had a master's degree in something, and he also had a solid job back in Russia, and now he's, painting houses, the interior of houses for $15 an hour. But you know what he said to me? He said, like one day we were just painting and we'd take a little break, and he took out an apple. He's like, I can take a break and eat this apple whenever I want. This for me is freedom. Like, I don't have a boss screaming down my neck. I don't have anyone telling me when to stop, when to go home. I set my own hours, and when I want to stop and eat this apple, I can eat it. And I just thought that was a cool way to look at life, like he never complained about this stuff. I knew him for months before he even told me any of this. It was just, we got talking one day, and he was talking about his old life in Russia, and but he was very grateful to be in Canada. So maybe for him, having a job that pays the bills and you can stop and have that apple whenever you want to, that's his Canadian dream. But it's not the same dream a lot of us had when we grew up in Canada and when we were young, or when Americans grew up in the States and they were young. So it's all relative, these dreams. But I will say this, and I'm going to end the video here because it's starting to get long again. But by the way, if you are still here, leave a turtle emoji in the comment section. Let me know you're still watching. I always love to know who makes it near the end of these longer videos. But to finish my thought on the topic of the Canadian dream, oh my God, I just remembered there was this place where I was on Facebook, and I was looking at, I don't know, it doesn't matter what I was looking at, but there was a conversation between a couple of older Canadians, the older generation, the baby boomers, as they call them. And people were talking about, the oldest story of time, how the younger generation, they don't work hard. They were saying, our parents' generation, they used to work 7 days a week. Kids these days, they don't work hard. They just don't have a work ethic. And everyone was liking the post. All the baby boomers were agreeing, like, yeah, kids don't work anymore. And I just wanted to comment, but I didn't, because going back to my last video, why I stopped arguing with strangers on the internet, I just didn't want to get in a big argument about nonsense. But I was just thinking to myself, they have no idea what our perspective is. Why would you work hard? Why would you work 7 days a week, working your hands to the bone, when you don't even have a house, when you don't even have a dream of a house, when you don't even have a dream of a future, when there's wildfires on the West Coast, there's record-breaking heat waves, you feel like what world are we even building? Why would you even have kids and raise a family when the future is so uncertain and it looks like everything is just gonna, destroy itself? What future do we have to believe in, to work hard for? Your generation had a future to believe in, and we feel let down. We feel like that future was taken from us. And I don't blame my parents. I don't blame the whole generation. It's not like any individual's fault. But I do kind of blame the politicians who have let this happen one term after another. And I do blame the system, which has allowed billionaires like, Jeff Bezos to make billions and billions of dollars during a pandemic, and to, he wants to go to space. Okay, Richard Branson, you were just the first billionaire to make it to space. Congratulations, man. Maybe you and all your friends can go escape to another planet while the rest of us watch our dreams disappear and watch our countries get more expensive and watch our planet slowly destroy itself. So yeah, maybe kids don't work as hard as they used to. But maybe there's a reason for that. And maybe it has to do with the fact that the Canadian dream, the American dream, what can I say? We've woken up. It's what George Carlin said. You had to be asleep to believe it. Well, we're not asleep anymore. No one's asleep. And I think these issues of income inequality and the rising cost of living, I think it's going to be a major issue for the next 10, 20 years, maybe 30 years, maybe the rest of my life. I don't know. I think there's going to be an increasing number of protests about this. I think there's going to be, I don't know, it could get ugly. I don't know what's going to happen, but people need something to believe in. And our generation needs that as well. And that's my thought on the death of the Canadian dream, I guess. Boy, that was a bit of a depressing video, wasn't it? But, you know, sometimes these hard conversations need to be had. And I don't think there's enough people in the news media actually talking about this. You know, they're so busy talking about whatever celebrity drama they want to talk about, distract us with, basically. They don't have the courage, these news networks, to actually take a deep dive into questions like this. It's too real for them, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they're still asleep. But we're not. Most of us have woken up. See you next time.